there's a lot of, me coming forward and sharing my story. I am opening myself up to ridicule. I am opening myself
Criticism.
up to the
That
comment
is
section
public
because
nature.
I promise you, and just go back and think of the things that have been talked about, discussed, current affairs, news, everything that's happened over the past 3 years regarding
Right.
drug facilitated sexual assault, sex trafficking, the Epstein stuff, all the Diddy
Yes.
stuff. There's a lot of
Yes.
stuff intertwined, it's just a lot of stuff. And I can assure you one thing, there is not one thing that is discussed in the contents of the things that these, survivors have survived. There's not one thing that I'm triggered by. I'm triggered by the comment section. I'm triggered by
Yes.
by by
Absolutely.
people coming and speaking on things that they, number one, don't know anything about, and number
And
two,
they've never
wouldn't.
experienced it.
I have
When
survived
I
things.
picked bear, oh my goodness. Picking
Yeah,
bear was like
yeah.
asking for it.
No, I'll take bear any day.
Yes, I think most of us would, and it's straight
Yeah,
asking for it.
yeah. But
So, one of the things that I want to talk about and want really want to try to cover, what were your symptoms when you were being drugged? Because I want to nerd out a little bit.
yeah, no, this is important to talk about too, because right off the bat, and going back to I believe that I was drugged with three different things, something to keep my brain fuzzy, to elicit the brain fog and the confusion, and to keep me, just in this very confused state, and
Right.
that opened the door for other things to happen, something to cause libido off the charts. And girl, when I'm talking off the charts, I experienced things that I didn't even know were humanly possible. And
Yes.
I'm talking about having sex every single day with this man, 4 or 5, 6 hours straight. And I'm not
Right.
exaggerating. Back to back to back orgasms with very little effort put into
Right.
that. And I mean, it was just happening over and over and over again. And then, it got to a point where we're not even in the room anymore. We're floating in a galaxy far, far
And
away.
there are several different medications that are prescribed. I'm not going to get into that in detail, but these are called excitatory neurotransmitters. You've heard of some of them before. So it's your adrenaline or epinephrine, your noradrenaline or norepinephrine. But then you have your dopamine, you have your glutamate, you have your acetylcholine. So those are your five big ones. And with those five big ones, they act on several different receptors, and the drugs that they prescribe for seizures, the way they modulate these excitatory neurotransmitters is a little bit different, but their goal is to take these excitatory neurotransmitters and make them do certain things. So when you're talking about, and they call them date rape drugs, but they're drugs that work in so many different ways. And one of the main things that all of them do is they work on the excitatory neurotransmitters. Their job is take these five neurotransmitters and make their action either greater or less great. And how they do this dictates the action. And I'm not going to get into specifically, yes, I am. I'm going to nerd out. I started it, I'm going to finish it. So everyone knows benzodiazepines. If you are looking to do something, and I hate to say this, but the date rape genre, chances are you know benzodiazepines or benzos or BZs, and there's several different kinds of benzodiazepines, and they work. There's the slow acting, the fast acting, and the medium. And the slow, the fast, and the medium is not based on how quick they act on the human, it's how quick you can detect them.
Mm.
And so this is important when you're doing drug tests. If you think you've been drugged and there was sexual activity that happened to you, most people use slow acting. And so these are CNS depressants. These are usually your sleeping pills. And so you get into your Restorol, your Versed, your Helicon. And I'm using the name brands because if I say things like um, your midazolam or
Yeah.
your triazolam, most people they're not going to know what I'm talking about. I want to say very clearly, yes, I am mentioning name brands. I am not mentioning these name brands because they do anything wrong or they've done anything wrong. They've developed very nice pharmaceuticals that have a very good place And I am not talking anything about what this company or companies have done. And as someone who used to work for pharmaceutical companies, there is a very great place for pharmaceuticals. And while in some places I will mention a brand name drug, it is in most places not the only brand name, but
Yeah.
just like we will say Kleenex for facial tissue, or we say Vaseline for petroleum jelly. The pharmaceutical has done so well at its job that people just
Yeah.
switch out the generic for the brand name. And so I want to make it very, very clear that the pharmaceutical that I may mention by brand name, and in some places I will mention both the brand name and the um the generic, just because I want people to know that even if it's not the brand name, it is the same substance. And so I have to give that just because um, I don't want people to think, oh, it's not Versed, but if it's Midazolam, it
Yeah.
is the same drug.
Yeah.
And so I want to say one, there are a lot of benzodiazepines that are very short acting and they are used very often for drug facilitated crimes, and they will disappear in the body within a few hours
Yeah.
because they have very short half-lives. And
Yeah.
so people have to be very aware of that. Like one of the original date rape drugs, flunastratram, is a benzodiazepine. Usually speaking, for someone that may not know any pharmaceuticals at all, if it ends in a zapam, it's a
Yeah.
benzodiazepam. And
Yeah.
so be cognizant of that. Most benzodiazepams are actually used for your central nervous system depressant. So their whole job is to make it so that your brain and your nerves do not work.
Yeah.
So that's why they're used for drug facilitated crimes, because it makes it so that your body doesn't work the way it's supposed to. You don't speak, you don't walk, you don't fight. Sometimes you don't know where you are. And that's with a lot of sleeping pills, is if you overdose on those, you won't know where you are. And so that's why with a lot of sleeping pills, they come with a lot of warnings that say, take one, do not take more than one, do not mix with this, do not mix with that,
Yeah.
because their whole job is to make you sleep, but be aware and conscious so that you wake up. If you
Yeah.
overdose on them, which doesn't mean that you're not going to wake up, it doesn't mean that you're going to have pain. What it means is it may take you longer to wake up. You may wake up and not know where you are or what happened to you. That's what overdose means with a lot of the benzodiazepines. And so that's very, very important, because in a lot of those places where you have that brain fog, you may not remember what exactly happened to you, or you only know bits and pieces. It's because you may have taken more. Whether you knew it or not, you've
Yeah.
taken more than the prescribed dose.
Yeah.
And I also need to mention, because a lot of people, especially when you're talking about college age people, frat parties, and things of that nature, you may be on this, medically prescribed the way you're supposed to be. You're taking it the way you're supposed to be, but you're drinking. Alcohol in and of itself is a drug. A lot
Hmm.
of people treat it like it's not a drug. It is a drug. Ethanol is a drug. And so when you start taking a benzodiazepine with an alcohol, you're actually making it act more than it's supposed to. You are compounding the
Yeah.
effects. So even if you're taking your whatever the way you're supposed to, but if you drank beforehand, or, and I will say I'm horrible at this, but I'm not on a benzo. I will take one of my, I know I have to take X, and I'm drinking. I was just having a bourbon. I'll drink it, take my last shot, my last sip of bourbon with the drug, and I go to bed. You can intensify the effects of said pill because of alcohol.
Hmm.
Alcohol is very, very common. As a forensic toxicologist and as a forensic neurosurgeon will tell you this, when you're looking at, fatal cases, you're looking at overdose cases, you're looking at problematic cases, alcohol is usually on board.
Yeah.
So, and then another category of drug are going to be your Z drugs. And Z drugs are normally or usually for or for insomnia, and these are going to be your non-benzodiazepine insomnia drugs. And so they're called or antidepressants, and they're called Z drugs because most of them start with the Z. The only brand name that starts with the Z, and I will apologize, is going to be Zoloft. Then you have Zolpidem, which is Ambien, which Ambien itself, they had to reformulate in a certain way because people were seeing the chickens and they were fighting the chickens, but they didn't remember anything about the big blue chicken. And so that was actually used for facilitated crimes for a very long time until people started to get injured because people were fighting the big blue chicken. Then you have Ezopidin and you have Zepilon. And so those are going to be your four big Z drugs. Um, Anticonvulsants, your gabapentins, your pregabalins. And if I'm talking about what things do, you have CNS depressant slash antidepressant. These are going to move into a different category because these actually work on a specific receptor in your brain. And now we're moving into things that specifically act on a receptor. And the other one is going to be Benadryl. And I have to mention Benadryl and what is it? What is it? It has a name. Crap, what is Benadryl? Diphenhydramine.
Yeah.
And that one's actually very important. And the reason why it's very important because when you're looking at some of your Z drugs and specifically for you, Amanda, when you were talking about cross reactivity. And so what cross reactivity is for people listening, if you think you've been drugged, you go to the hospital or you do a self-test and you get one of those 12 panels or 24 panels, 6 panels, whatever, because before they send anything off to a lab, they're going to have you pee in a cup. And depending on what it is that comes up when you pee in a cup, they either are going to send it off to the lab, they may, blame you, argue with you some more, but for a lot of things, especially for some of the benzos, they don't actually come up for benzos. They'll come up for what's called a tricyclic um, antidepressant. If you're not prescribed an antidepressant, and if you are, it becomes even more difficult. So Benadryl comes up for TCA. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um, and and it also comes up for methadone. So Benadryl is actually used for some drug facilitated crimes because you can mix Benadryl with alcohol and it intensifies their effect. One of the things Benadryl does is it knocks you out because it wants your body to stop reacting to whatever allergen you're taking. And so when it knocks you out, it makes you stop reacting to whatever allergen it thinks you're taking, it's going to knock you, it's going to get you down. And most people, when they see a TCA, they'll assume Benadryl. And so they're not going to act on it because it's Benadryl. People take Benadryl. Benadryl's an over the counter. It's very, very common. So it was mentioned earlier in some of the things that Amanda was saying that they used to smoke weed together. Marijuana is actually one of the most common things that's used as a media for drugging, and so is alcohol. So once you get away from the drugs, weed, and alcohol that are used, you have other drinks, you have some lotions and some oils. So there are some drugs that really like liquid, like water based, and then there's some that are oil based. And so you can't put this oil in the water because it's just going to float. People are like, what's in my cup? And then they're not going to drink it. So they'll put it in oil. So if you're with someone and they decide to get really into massaging you at night, there may be something in that oil. So going more into some of the drug tests where you get compounds that will make you not only more sexually aroused, but also get you real drugged, you have to look at some of the things like Evelyn or amitriptyline, Palamor, which is noramotryptamine, and then Sequel is a huge one, because Sequel is actually very easy to get prescribed for you, and it actually gives you false positives above both on TCA and methadone. Most people see you take methadone, they assume you're in a treatment program.
Yeah.
There is a lot of embarrassment around being in a treatment program, but methadone is considered you getting better. And so they won't necessarily, most places won't actually necessarily ask you if you're in a treatment program. They'll just be like, okay, they must be in a treatment program. So when you start getting Seroquel, um, they just assume you're in treatment and they don't do anything about it. The problem with Seroquel is it is a very good depressant on its own. So, and it's actually a good oil. It will mix with weed, but it won't make it burn differently. Some of the drugs will actually burn differently. And so when you start looking at your drinking something, or if you want to do an oil, if it's not going to be a massage and you want to do an oil, because the active ingredient in THC, if you remember from weeks ago, is an oil. And so you want an oil to mix with an oil. And it's going to give false positives because Seroquel will give a false positive in both TCA and methadone.
Wow.
So if it's one of those drugs, that's a really good one to do because one, it's common enough where people won't think anything of it. And two, it actually soaks into the marijuana leaf very, very well. It won't change the way that it burns. And when it comes up on a drug test, it's not something that will raise an eyebrow real quickly. It won't go, huh. And so a lot of people don't go down that further path.
Yeah.
And so one of the side effects actually of Seroquel is drowsiness, dizziness, and it actually it will increase your dopamine, which increases your sex drive. And so when you start looking at things that will increase your sex drive, you think about blood flow, which a lot of, you know, GABA receptor agonists will do, a lot of antidepressants will do. And so you get into this place where you're like, okay, so anything you take that's going to be an antidepressant is also going to increase your sex drive. That's what it's designed. Well, it's not designed to make you want to fuck, but it's going to make you want to go that way because it's designed to make you feel happier. And I don't know anyone who's happy that doesn't want to have sex. And so
Right.
when you start looking at all these things and you're taking several different things and, you know, based on some of the things you were telling me in your story, it sounds like, this person was probably using Benadryl, a real easy over the counter thing to get, and that will show up in a drug test as something fairly harmless, if not at all. So, and I hate to say this because I am not advocating for people to try to use it. There are some places now, as a standard, will actually test for diphenhal. I suck at drug names. Benadryl. Uh, and actually, there are some places, I know in some countries it's actually regulated now because it can be used for drug facilitated crimes. But between that and Seroquel, based on the things that you were finding in some of your tests, that is probably something that if I were you, I would make sure that they test for. Um, as we're moving forward, there is one thing that we have not talked about, and I apologize because I did see you crying, and I don't, and I hate that because I did not want to go that way. Is there are a lot of biases when it comes to drug facilitated crimes, and one of the things I will talk about when it comes to when you are being fed a substance against your will, there's going to be withdrawals. There's withdrawals with every single substance that you can take, whether it's alcohol, whether it's coffee, whether it is marijuana. even Benadryl, they all have withdrawal symptoms. And, you were with this person for several years. And so you were fed something probably daily. Um,
Yeah.
let's talk about, withdrawal if there was one.
Yeah. So the assault happened on the 25th. The near-death experience, the murder, the attempted murder happened on the 26th. I woke up on the 27th, and about 48 hours later, my body started going into excruciatingly painful withdrawals. And I can describe this to a T. And for someone who has never knowingly touched anything other than weed in my whole life, never had a
Right,
desire to, weed has always been my drug of choice. If you even want to call it a drug, like I need to, this is part of what I want to get into as well, and the medicinal effects and how I have relied on cannabis to heal from the trauma that I've endured, and then the ways that I have been treated like a drug addict by medical professionals, by people, anybody that I went to go run to for help. They found out, oh, some of the things that are, and I have written, things that were in statements and medical documentation and ways that I was treated and ways I was dismissed. And it was like doctors just heard that. And then all of a sudden, oh, she's a drug addict and I don't know if I can trust her. And she's having a panic attack. And this was the whole thing. Like, no, I went through and like I said, I believe that he was drugging me with a concoction of
right,
something to keep my brain fuzzy, something to increase libido. And then towards the end, like the last 6 months of the relationship, when we lived together, he had full access to me, and I started experiencing periods of blacking out. And I'm talking about being wide awake. He would make a drink, make a nightcap, we have the lights on, put a show on. I'm wide awake, ready to turn up, and then I'm out, and I wake up the next morning
yep,
and I'm naked, I'm wet. Like I don't, my God, I don't even remember having sex. And the things, again, this is one of the things that I really, really, really need for people to understand is when these things are happening, and I was back in and out of doctors' offices and out of hospitals. I'm
right,
going, I'm telling my doctor all of these crazy details of the sex and everything that I'm experiencing. And it wasn't just that; it was crazy kind of tremors, like feelings of electricity going through my body, just chronic tachycardia. And I normally that's something that I want to talk about because I normally stay in the gym working out the pretty much the entire time that I was with him. I couldn't because my heart was just racing all the time.
right.
I had this severe onset of vertigo, this crazy, it wasn't even like the room was spinning. It was like my head continued to spin when I turned
Oh,
over
wow.
in the middle of the night, like from the pillow. And going anyway, what I'm saying is I was in and out of doctor's offices. I am saying this is happening to me. Can you help me understand? I thought that I had early onset MS. I
Okay,
was being, given referrals to neurology and brain MRI, cervical spine MRI, all the labs. I mean, I say all the labs, but just trying to investigate these things. I'm
right,
going to the doctor. I'm doing everything that you're supposed to do in these situations. Something
right,
as amazing as this sex was that I was having, it didn't make sense. I couldn't make sense of it. And
right.
I start firing off emails. I'm a very, have a medical background before the interior design, my military career. And so I'll go online and find studies, and I'm finding doctors and wherever they were, different countries. I fired off, found their emails. I'm firing off emails to doctors all over the world.
Okay.
I don't understand what's happening to my body. If you have any studies, I don't know if I'm a medical anomaly or whatever, but this
Help
doesn't make
me.
sense. This
Right.
doesn't make
Help
sense.
me.
Yeah. And now going back and looking back at all of these were my cries for help.
I want to talk about that. And I want to talk
Yeah.
about that in a very nerdy way. So, you know, to kind of drive home the point that you were making of all the things that you went through and all of the pain and all the panels that you had taken and your strive for justice and quitting cold turkey and what that looked like. I want to wrap up with you know one talking about your book and what your fight for justice actually looked like, and you know because I want to give you a plug, and I think we covered everything else. So let's accept a few biases about. Um, I guess we'll start with your biases about how most sexual assaults from professionals actually look like sex workers.
Yeah, so that was one of my, as a newcomer to softs, and
which is
I
the
promise,
Society of Forensic Toxicologists.
yeah, and I couldn't wait because you got to understand, before I even met you at that conference for the previous 900 something days, I had studied on my own NPS and
Which is
novel psych.
novel psychoactive substances. Sorry.
Yeah. And no, no, no. This is what I've studied because this was like, getting into it, and I'm getting into all of this in my book. Every detail. You don't if for people who have questions and don't understand how it can happen and how it can go missed, and this is my story, and this is exactly what happened to me, and the withdrawals were real, the things that I experienced and the ways that they were dismissed as, this is what happens when a woman goes and you're crying for help, and you're hysterical because, hello, I'm traumatized. Do you not
Right,
understand what I have just survived? I was drugged long term without my knowledge or consent. I
right,
have, that opened the door for even more evil crimes, physical assaults, sexual assaults,
right,
two attempted murders. I've survived now two attempted murders and a near death experience. And
right,
of course, I'm traumatized. And the person that I was 3 years ago, I was hysterical, but I was viewed as hysterical, which is what
right.
a lot of people are gonna do. They see a
And
woman
they treat
crying
you differently in the
and
healthcare system.
they absolutely do. And instead of getting the answers, so here I am, I'm trying to solve my crime because I did all the things. I ran to police. I did everything that I was supposed to. I cooperated. I gave evidence. I got a protective order. I pressed charges. Like, I'm doing all of the things. I'm being forthcoming with my part in this as well. Like, I live in the state of Texas, and we were smoking weed, and all the ways that can be criminalized, right? And so
Right,
I'm moving forward, and I don't care about any of that. Do you like, do not see what happened to me, and
right.
going and trying to get justice and continuously being treated like, I'm sorry. I like, this is what I need for people to understand. I was told, we're not going to test your evidence. What do you mean you're not going to test my evidence? I
Yeah,
have a lot of evidence, and things are going to come out in the book where it's just like, oh, there's no denying what happened. This is exactly
right,
what happened. And for police to tell me that, okay, cool, well, guess what, I don't care how much it costs. I don't care where I got to go to. Where do I need to go to a reputable
lab to get
forensics
this
crime
tested.
lab
Right,
to get this done? And was continuously told by police, I'm sorry, I don't know, you're going to have to figure that out on your own. And that began my journey of figuring it out on my own. And I
right.
have reached out, when you want to talk about being resourceful, I have reached out to Bear
A
County
lot of
Sheriff.
labs. Let's not name any.
Yeah, but I won't name, but just the organizations that I have gone to and trying
Right,
to elevate my story and to get the help that I deserve, and to get somebody to look into this, somebody to investigate this. Bear County Sheriff's Office, Texas DPS, Texas Rangers, FBI, DEA. I'm telling you, and most of my cries for help have gone unanswered.
which is
And
unfortunate.
I mean, like, not even a phone call back, not even an email back. And it's just, this is my life. This is my life, and my
Absolutely.
life is worth something. I'm still here to tell my story.
And I
And
love that. And I actually call it the what's her name? Marissa Hargitay, Hargitay
mhm,
effect. The fact that she was able to get all 50 states to agree to test their rape kit backlog, to me, that's important. And then right after that happened, I'm here in the state of Michigan, in the city of Detroit. They actually formed a task force where they're now searching every empty lot, every vacant home in the city of Detroit for missing women. Like,
wow.
that's amazing. That task force was right after that decision, and I do know that that was in process before the decision by the Supreme Court, but to me, I'm still saying that she was probably part of it because she has been advocating
Oh,
around
yeah.
this country for years, and I'm hoping that her effect, the Olivia Benson effect, really pushes people to not only start testing things but to reform how they talk to survivors. I don't want to say victim, to survivors. That is
Yeah. Yeah.
important to me.